You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell, Community Engagement Lead at Pathify. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a proud member of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow every day. Explore all of our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another wonderful episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. So our guest today, Sara Leoni, you are with Ziplines Education, a company that I've sort of heard of, seen on LinkedIn and such. So I'm excited to kind of learn more about it myself. It's often the case, I think, for a lot of our episodes. Like, I feel like I just get as much out of it as I think our audience does. So appreciate you taking the time. We'll start as we always do. If you want to briefly introduce yourself and your background, maybe just kind of give a quick glimpse into the work that Ziplines Education does, and then we will go from there.
You bet. Great to be here, Dustin. I appreciate you having me. So, as you mentioned, Sara Leoni, I'm the founder and CEO of Ziplines Education, and we are a career accelerator that partners with universities to deliver industry-aligned certificate courses that help adult learners upskill and reskill into what we call tech-adjacent careers. And, if I stay on that thread, I started my career in what I would now consider a tech-adjacent career way back when marketing transitioned into digital marketing, working for brands like E-Trade and Yahoo, really, really large brands that built much of their business online, where technology, where data started to play a much bigger role in those particular organizations and really tied to the success of those roles. And I found my way into higher education through a textbook rental company called Book Renter, where I served as the head of marketing for that organization, helping it grow from 2 to over 50 million in about 3 years. But more importantly, saving students $500 million on their textbooks. And through that experience, I recognized the impact that expenses have. I mean, it's no real surprise. I think we talk a lot about tuition. There's not as much, I think there's more now that we hear about related to additional expenses. And so served in that much a similar audience of adult learners that, had gotten their tuition paid for, but really needed help to lower the cost of the textbooks, and just saw the impact that education and really the opportunity education had to impact people's lives in a very positive way.
Yeah, and I think just with like kind of our conversation here, like I feel like kind of sort of like a trifecta. I think if I can just sort of like stick the landing on that idea of like, sort of like cost affordability, like just the sticker price or sort of, tuition, but also certainly room costs if you're staying on campus and, off campus as well. But, some of the things are just like more or less explicit, and other things are those just sort of moving targets of like, well, it depends on which courses you're taking, like, the textbooks, and then the idea if you're leveraging used books or rentals or digital books or whatever else. But like, all of that kind of has to like equal out for you, like whatever your situation is as a student. So, and I think as we're kind of prepping for this episode, I think there's so much going on this, because I think this work has been happening for a while. So we're seeing sort of the like kind of ripple effects and kind of permutations and all the nuances and really kind of nitty gritty details of, upskilling the workforce to align more with these tech adjacent fields. And even just that, I feel like there's a lot of positions and organizations that could be classified under that. But I think what was interesting was the idea of like regionality to this, the idea that certain parts of the country, I think, have been maybe more overlooked and neglected in this. So I know what you all are doing is focusing more on middle America. So could you just explain kind of the key trends and why, focusing on like a specific region is like important for like your company's work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think when we think about who we're serving, they are adult learners, right? Average age is 36, 37 years old. These are folks that, we'll say middle America or mainstream America, people who are working for organizations, maybe outside of the tech hubs. And I think that's a distinction that we like to make, right? I think if you're in a tech hub, you tend to, just because the general tidal wave, if you will, right? You have to be able to keep up. There's so many opportunities to keep up versus if you live in, say, Tulsa, Oklahoma, or you're in a smaller city in Texas where you still need to have the skills because technology is really moving faster than the workforce can keep up, right? And even if you may be in one of these less robust from a technology perspective regions, the reality is these folks need to stay relevant with today's changing trends. And, like step back, take something like generative AI, for example, right? I think we're all, in many cases, still trying to figure out exactly what it means, how we use it, what the possibilities are, what the constraints might be. But when we think about how rapidly that market is changing, one thing is really clear is that one, we know the skills are going to evolve, right? We know that what's needed today is going to be different than say a year or 2 years from now. And so cost is a big factor for people as they think about determining what programs they want to take or how they want to approach, that upskilling process. And for us, when we think about this tech adjacent world, it's really business professionals that we know they still need to harness data and technology to get ahead, right? We know that they need to be able to leverage these things to be efficient and that it's really, I would say, imperative to their survival and adaptability around skill generation is key. And that's where we come in. And again, I would say it's when we think about that mainstream audience, we're really targeting in many cases, I think, we work with universities and provide programs and partnerships with universities. And most of those universities are large 4-year public, possibly land grant institutions where the people who are leaning into those institutions aren't the people that are applying to a Harvard or a Stanford or to an Ivy League school, right? They're reaching for what is really going to be accessible to them and affordable to them.
Yeah. And I guess it's even just to like, certainly from what you're saying, like it's as much about like specific locations of like not like the tech hubs that you would think of across the country, but even just sort of like the population where that could kind of spill over of, not just like, the Midwest of America. It's like sort of middle America in terms of just sort of like a segment of our society that, maybe like at feeling like they're kind of stuck in their career or certain jobs and, or, kind of dead end jobs and looking to upskill and be more gainfully employed and build a good life for their family and everything. And I think, like you said, and even just like what would be considered a tech adjacent job, could be more or less like technical in the day to day of it. Like you're going to be using digital tools to be doing marketing work, even though it is informed by, maybe a lot of the same like theories and things that may have been used in years past. But so I guess if you could just elaborate, because I know for me, it's always, I think, really powerful doing work that feels very kind of relevant and innovative, but still kind of, tethering that to institutions, those brands, those kind of community hubs and just centers and everything else. So like there's just so many more kind of benefits and assets that kind of come along with, anchoring around the institution. So can you just give more detail about the work that you do, kind of accelerating upskilling, working with institutions and maybe some of the challenges, kind of bringing these two worlds together?
Yeah. I mean, I think, at its core, we're really helping these institutions build capacity, right? In many cases, they don't have the resources that they need. They don't have the opportunity to say develop curriculum that's changing as quickly as it is because industry is evolving. They don't have access to the pools of, say, subject matter experts or access to employers to be able to ensure that the curriculum really can keep pace with industry. And I think that's just not been their DNA to date, right? And so we're able to go in and really provide them like very much just a win-win symbiotic relationship where they have a gap, their charter. So typically we're partnering with a continuing and professional education division, right? And their charter is how do we help our communities, whether it's post-degree, maybe it's students who never got a degree, but how do we help them continue that evolution of learning? And so for us, we're able to provide a really important service to those institutions while for our learners, for the communities that we serve together, it's really important that people who are going through this process of upskilling that they have a understood credential, right? To walk into an employer that an employer can recognize the value of, say, a certificate from University of Oregon or an award of completion from University of Virginia. That weighs pretty heavily because they've got the credibility of the employers of those particular regions. I think, in terms of challenges, look, I've spent more than a decade of my career working with higher education institutions. I think the challenges, they don't move as fast as private organizations or, as a startup. And so there's this constant push and pull, within the organization of the team wanting to move really fast on things and us saying, look, we just need to tap the brakes because we need to make sure that we're bringing our partners along for the ride, right? We need to make sure that they too are aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. And so, managing that pace of innovation while also making sure that we are really communicating and ensuring that the pace that we're running at is comfortable for our institutions can be challenging at times. I would say that's probably one of the bigger push and pulls for us. And then, there's the natural. So just again, because we work with continuing and professional education, we are often, we have conversations with, say, faculty or folks that, are responsible for more degree specific programs about, are we competing with these programs or, how can we all live symbiotically? And traditionally what we find is we serve a very different audience, right? If somebody's trying to get a 4-year degree, they believe intuitively that they need more than, say, a 10-week course that's going to help them upskill. Or if they're going in to take a graduate certificate, there's probably a very valid reason while they're doing that. And guess what? Their employer may be paying for a significant portion of that. And we find that we can, we can add capacity, not just from how do we serve these folks, but really helping them identify a completely new market that they haven't been able to serve before.
Yeah, that has been interesting to see, like that kind of culture clash. One, just sort of like, bringing uh, a faster paced sort of modern curriculum or just sort of like a different vibe. Like, I think that's just the story of ed tech, certainly in general. But and I think that idea of like, are we going to be competing with ourselves and those sort of notions, I think are, interesting to observe. I think you're exactly right. I mean, my sort of like perception is like kind of the idea is like, no, you're helping to like build what could potentially be your future pipeline. If they have a good experience, like enrolling in this course with the faculty and with everybody else, it's like, it'd be pretty hard to believe that they wouldn't at least like consider your institution pretty strongly if they, desire to come back. And especially if you have like really strong and clear kind of stackability and stuff like that's been such a like buzzword. But I think some institutions might like talk a big game with that, but like just the logistics of like how their institution operates and stuff makes it like, too difficult or something. But that's just what I've even seen with like, kind of where I think a lot of like the boot camp space is kind of settled is like that a lot of the big providers made pretty big splashy commitments with institutions to say, if you complete our boot camp, you get sort of preferred admission into, the institution for, furthering, getting like a 4-year degree and everything. And I was like, I think that is smart. Like, I think that's great. Because I think it is an idea that like, you get that, kind of micro credential, hopefully that it gets you a job that then, like the employer pays for it in the future. But I guess just in terms of like the actual kind of student experience and everything. So I think, again, like sort of one of the pillars I think that are really important for institution right now to be mindful of is sort of the flexibility or the kind of personalization and everything. So could you just kind of shine a little bit more of a light on what that learner experience, I guess, that you're striving towards in the programs that you're offering?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think about this question, I think about it in two sort of different but adjacent categories. The first is you have to understand how much time does somebody have to put into a program, right? What's the commitment level that they're willing to give, and what do they have happening around them that's going to impact their ability to learn? And so when we first set out to really think about how do we serve this very unique audience with a variety of challenges that they're dealing with in their lives, I will say we designed with a lot of intentionality in mind, right? We were very clear on who our learner persona was. And we spent a lot of time gathering feedback, both quantitative through surveys, qualitative through interviews to understand how much time were they willing to dedicate? What type of structure did they feel like was most aligned to how they wanted to learn? And what constraints did they have? And granted, we didn't take all of that input verbatim. If you ask, people say, well, I want to learn on demand all the time. And I don't want to have restrictions. I want to be able to do it across 2 years. And the reality is, okay, that might be great from a flexibility perspective, but guess what? Your completion rates are going to be dismal. And so, we very early on decided we were going to do a cohort-based model, that it was going to be hybrid. It's fully online, but it was going to be hybrid. 80% of our learning process is asynchronous. Folks can do it on their own, before their job, during their job, after their job, whatever time frame on the weekends they want to do that. But we also knew that we really wanted to build a community-based element to the learning experience. And so we do bring people together into a social learning process, because we do believe, especially for business professionals that are trying to achieve something greater than where they're at today, that element of learning is really important to that step change function in one's career, right? That ability to articulate an idea, that ability to come together, to show up on Zoom with a camera turned on, right? And to have a conversation. And so, we brought all those data points together to create that, what I would say is a really compelling learning experience. And then the second piece is, we serve a very diverse audience, right? And many of them have different goals. We have folks that are looking to completely reskill and have zero prior experience in a business area and want to gain those skills and parlay that into a job. We have folks that are in a job in a company and they just want to do better in that job. Literally, like, I just want to be happier in my job. I want to feel like I'm contributing more in my job. And we have folks that are in the discipline in a company, but really like trying to make a change out because they know that's the best way to get, say, a salary increase or maybe a promotion. And so for us, we need to really think about who these audiences are and how different their goals are. Because guess what? One size does not fit all when you think about that. And so we're really starting to think about and implement how we design even more detailed segment-based learning pathways for those folks that are looking for a wholesale career change. Well, guess what? They're going to need more support. They don't have the background in this particular area. They're going to need more career support to understand how to articulate transferable skills. And they're probably going to need more hands-on experience than some other folks. And similarly, for people who are looking to upskill, maybe they need more around how to negotiate change with their manager, or how to think about parlaying this program into a new job at a new company. And so we're thinking really deeply about how we can help people navigate those different changes based on the experience that we can bring to the table.
Yeah, I think it's really smart to have what feels like kind of like the best of both worlds of that idea that self-paced, flexible, asynchronous learning, but really integrating kind of intentional, meaningful, synchronous interactions. Because I've always kind of scoffed at the notion of having like everything be completely asynchronous, because again, it's like that's probably what a student would tell you that they want. But in my experience, I think just in generally in life, like when you ask people, yeah, like what they want, they'll tell you a thing, but then it ends up being like not actually what they want. And that's just I feel like a human phenomenon. But that idea that like on that relevancy piece of sort of kind of the trifecta there that I was explaining before, it's like I think at times it really just feels like I've taken some like completely asynchronous course and it's sort of just like a over glorified like YouTube playlist or something. Like you're just kind of like going through YouTube videos to the next, and it's like, cool, all right, great, but like, why would I be paying like top dollar for this or something? It's like I would like to get some level of certainly faculty interaction. I mean, like that's such a kind of high impact practice, but certainly like build my social capital with my peers and like process ideas, sort of figure out a way to kind of construct and convey information to others, and just try to have these sort of avenues to ask those questions more actively and hear others' perspectives, be exposed to that diversity and all those sort of things that I think anybody in education would aspire towards. And I think sometimes we throw a little too much out with the bathwater. We're just like, we're building these new things, and it's like the fundamentals are still there and still important, even though this feels like such a kind of radically new kind of paradigm and modality for learning. So it's great to hear, I guess, that sort of kind of bedrock kind of commitment of just being like, well, let's not like forego the things that I think are going to be really relevant, in terms of designing a good learner experience, even if it's something, like a 10-week online course, like you'd still want to have those, those meaningful human interactions in there.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, there's so many statistics around the percentage of people who find their next job through networking, right? And networking has become, I think, depends on the world you live in, but can be a really bad word to people. It's like they find it to be incredibly intimidating. And yet it's so critical to career success. And how do you teach networking in a fully online program where you're fully by yourself doing everything on your own? And for us, like that's become a focal point in terms of some of those social learning engagements is how do we teach people, right? How do we help people learn how to fish, right? We don't want to do the fishing for them, but we need them to start to understand why building some of those, even like those, what you might call softer skill sets, is so incredibly important to managing your career over a lifetime versus just what's that next job.
Yeah, and I think, and depending on just the nature of certain micro credentials, I feel like I have a sneaking suspicion, I guess, that like there is sometimes an over assumption on the prior experience, that this could be one of the very first like post-secondary experiences that these students have, versus it being like, oh, this is just like the cherry on top of this, that, the other, like, some, I mean, I feel like, frankly, kind of like dangerous assumptions to be making when you're like building out something versus like, maybe making adjustments down the line based on like, oh, wow, like, the actual students who are applying and completing the courses are different than we thought. We might like, make some pivots or something. Like it's the idea of being like, oh, I'm sure they're fine. They don't want any social interaction. They don't want to do any of that stuff. Like, and you just completely rip it all out and whatever. It's like, I mean, like start to get some feedback before you make like these sort of, kind of pretty impactful kind of changes to, how you would deliver it, otherwise or something. So I guess that kind of segues nicely as we're kind of wrapping up, that idea of like tracking success for learners, certainly very importantly, but also like the institutions, they're making this commitment to expand their capacity, try to be more relevant, add more flexibility to their offerings and everything. So this can be, start with one or the other, take it as you will, but like just tracking success to know that what you're doing is effective.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I think about this, those two things are so intertwined, right? If we are in service first and foremost to the student, then we're almost always going to satisfy the needs of the institution. And like that may be a little too broad. I mean, there's other things that obviously we need to deliver on for the institution, but that is the truth. That is our core, which is why we're so focused on student outcomes and why we're really transparent around our student outcomes with our institutions. I mean, we have very early on. So again, coming from a background of marketing into the world of learning, I took this very data-driven approach to how we wanted to build telemetry into our learning experience. And so, we track all along the continuum, many different metrics. From embedded in our on-demand learning platform, we collect data weekly from students. It's in the form of a net promoter score, which doesn't necessarily give us an indication of learning outcomes, but definitely gives us a really strong signal in terms of overall experience. There's other data points we collect there too that we can feed back into the live session component of things. And then as we think about the general outcomes, it's not just like, yes, of course, we track things like completion rates, but really we want to think about what's a student's overall satisfaction with the course, right? And how do we measure that? So we collect data at the end of the course to understand things like, are they applying what they learned in the course, right? We're building a very pragmatic, practical learning experience. If they can't apply it, we've missed the mark. Are they feeling more confident and prepared as they walk back into the workplace or into an interview process? And then ultimately, did it help them achieve their career outcome, right? And we can tie that back to the data we've collected at the beginning in terms of what are they trying to accomplish. And we use that data to drive and fuel everything, and really connect those different elements to create a really strong picture of our student. And again, the segmentation within our student profiles, and all of that also feeds into how we think about low risk, medium risk, high risk students, how we think about the support infrastructure behind the students. And so I would say our entire learning experience is really underpinned by insights from, how folks are both navigating, but then how they're also just generally feeling about the learning experience through the process. And I would say if you do it any other way, you're not doing it good enough, right? But like, that's just, again, that's my very growing up in a background where you use data to signal everything. I think it's just really important. And, of course, we also that's all on the quantitative side. We do a lot of qualitative as well, just customer interviews and talking to folks and understanding, look, when you design a learning experience that is open enrollment, that, you're serving lots of diverse folks and people from different walks of life, you're not going to hit the mark with everyone, right? You're just not. And so, but understanding and learning from different personas is a really important part of our process as well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to see now, I mean, because I've dabbled in sort of some graduate certificate courses and things, and I've seen some pretty vast differences. And I think, I can expect that the expectations of today's learners, whether they're younger than I am or older than I am, we've had so many more opportunities to see really great, just user experiences online, other digital experiences or learning experiences. But I've gone through some online courses that were pretty garbage, but I kind of I had to rate it. I'd probably be like, it was fine, because that's kind of what I expected. But if I'm giving you a good score, then you're getting a good score, because you did a really good job. So that idea of at least kind of the, pulse check of NPS, it is that idea of these students who are earnestly giving up some of their likely very limited free time to be engaging in this. And if they're finding it easy to navigate, relevant, they're just I'm satisfied and I would recommend this to a person that I care about, kind of thing. It's that is high praise. We'll take it, versus it being I don't expect that you will are an expert in articulating the nuances of, high quality online learning design or something. I could ask you all these wonky questions about whatever, but it's at the very least, if they're being satisfied, it's fair to make some sort of extrapolations from that of being they're probably learning something, even if they don't know it right in this exact moment. They might be sort of letting it marinate, and whatever, it'll pop up for them, be oh yeah, I remember, I read that thing, or I talked about this stuff in that course that's a little while ago, so yeah, it's always those kind of interesting things where it's you got to be doing that sort of that outreach, that getting those data points and everything to even have anything to go on, because I do think, higher ed has that sort of chronic issue of kind of relying very heavily on anecdotes and just sort of well, when I was a student or whatever else, so that's good to hear. And I think as we're wrapping up, I think this work, like I said, I think it has just been kind of permeating for the past several years. I think there's still a lot of work to be done just to reach, more and more, learners who are looking to upskill and everything. So any goals, any teasers that you can share with us, things you're looking forward to with your work as you're looking ahead to the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, the net for us is we're continuing to look to grow and expand our relationships with our partners. So no real shocking discovery there. I think there are opportunities within that too. For us, a lot of it is continuing to deliver on the promise we make to ourselves, which is, how as a team do we deliver increasingly better outcomes? And within that has to come innovation, right? Has to come, how do we take our learning experience beyond what is really what I would consider great today and make it completely outstanding? So we've got lots of ideas for how we're going to do that as we enter the next couple of years. And part of that is, how do we expose different career opportunities to learners? How do we help them understand what pathways exist and what are the skills that lead to those pathways? And we are in this unique position of really being in a regional seat where the employment market in one state may be completely different in another state. And the skills that people need, there's a lot of overlapping skills, and then there's unique skills. And because of the way we've developed our curriculum, which is we've taken a very modular approach to how we've designed everything we do within Ziplines, we see a huge opportunity to begin to really configure pathways for people to even be more impactful to what they're specifically trying to accomplish over the course of the next, say, 6 to 3 years of their career. So I can't share too much more than that. But I think that, for us, building that differentiation and really helping to create even more of a network where employers can plug in as well is definitely going to be part of our, part of our focus areas for the years ahead.
Yeah, that's what I like. I've had several conversations recently. Folks are just sort of following along with every episode. I'm recording this on Friday after EdTech Week, and it's just like it's such a huge undertaking. It's nuanced, like you're saying, different from each state and everything. So I had that idea of like anything that we can do to try to better connect, employers with learners, or helping to kind of streamline like the way that we articulate like what this learner, what skills they have gained, and the jobs and what those jobs require, like, and then just making the accessibility of these kind of program offerings as readily available as possible and everything. Like again, it's just the idea of, I guess we'll end where we began. The idea like this work is going to require a lot of folks working in a lot of different facets and corners of the economy and just the country and everything. So I'm always heartened to see that folks are like seeing that it's just kind of acknowledgement of that, and not being like, oh well, somebody else is doing it, so I don't know, we'll leave it to them, because I'm sure one company will be able to do everything for everyone all over the place, whatever. So I think because it's just like a variety of approaches, and like you said, I mean, certainly like tech adjacent careers and fields and everything are a big one, but I'm like, I'm personally just excited to see that there's like, I think more that likely will happen in like the green energy field and everything, like just like there's just like all these different things. It's like that also probably requires like a decent bit of like specialization, or it's going to take time to build out in a thoughtful and intentional and kind of compelling way. So yeah, plenty of work to be done. Will we stay in tune for what you all are cooking up there at Ziplines, and appreciate you for hanging out and sharing all that you did, and more ways to connect with you and Ziplines Education in the description for the episode. But just appreciate you and appreciate all that you do, and appreciate you hanging out for today's episode.
Yeah, no, thanks again for having me, Dustin. This is really fun, and I hope that this can be somewhat interesting for your listeners.
The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.